For years, Emily and James had been the picture of a perfect couple. They met in their early 20s, fell in love quickly, and got married shortly after. Their relationship was built on trust, laughter, and shared dreams of a future together. James always admired Emily's beauty, kindness, and intelligence. He believed she was his soulmate, the one he would grow old with. But as time passed, things began to change. Emily became distant. James noticed the late nights, the lack of affection, and the growing silence between them. He thought it was just a phase. Maybe she was stressed with work or tired from their busy life. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One evening, when James returned home early from a business trip, he caught her. Emily was on the phone, laughing, with a man James had never met. Her face lit up in a way he hadn't seen in months. That moment, the gut-wrenching realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Emily had fallen out of love. The truth hurt more than he could bear, and his heart shattered as he discovered that Emily had been having an affair for months. The love that once filled their home had slowly turned to bitterness, regret, and betrayal. When James confronted her, Emily didn't deny it. She admitted that she had been searching for something outside their marriage, something she felt was missing. She confessed that she had fallen in love with someone else, someone who made her feel alive again. She was no longer the woman who had vowed to stand by him forever. With tears in her eyes, Emily begged James for a divorce. She wanted her freedom, a chance to live her life on her own terms, without the weight of guilt or obligation hanging over her. She promised James that she would leave quietly, with no drama, no fights. James, devastated and heartbroken, took a long time to respond. He loved her. How could he not? But the man he was before the betrayal no longer existed. The man in front of her was broken, wiser and more cautious about love. Finally, he spoke. "I loved you, Emily. I still do. But I can't keep holding on to something that no longer exists. You've already made your choice. I'm just here to set you free." The divorce papers were signed a few days later. Emily left their home with a heavy heart, knowing she had lost the love of a man who would have done anything for her. But at the same time, she felt an odd sense of relief, a freedom she didn't know she needed. As for James, he was left with the painful reality that love, no matter how deep, could sometimes turn into regret. He had to heal, to move on, and to rebuild his life. He realized that while he couldn't undo the past, he could choose a future that would be built on self-love, respect, and a fresh start. James had always been the type to believe in love with all his heart. He was loyal, compassionate, and dedicated to Emily, often putting her needs before his own. Their early years together were filled with laughter and shared dreams. They used to talk late into the night, their conversations filled with hope for a future they'd build together. But somewhere along the way, the connection began to fray. At first, the signs were subtle, small changes in Emily's behavior. She spent more time on her phone, often sneaking off to the other room, and when they did spend time together, it felt strained. The warmth between them, once so natural, started to feel forced. James tried to ignore it, chalking it up to stress from work or personal challenges. He believed that love could overcome anything, but as weeks turned into months, the distance between them only grew. He noticed how Emily began to withdraw from their shared life. She stopped making dinner as often, stopped showing interest in the little things that used to matter. Her smiles became rare, and her touch felt distant. James wondered if he was just overthinking it, but deep down, he knew something was off. The betrayal, when it came, hit him like a wave crashing against the shore. Emily had always been open about her feelings, but now In this moment of truth, she remained cold and detached. The man she had once shared everything with was now nothing more than a stranger to her. And worse, she had found comfort in the arms of someone else. The realization that love had faded, just like that, left James feeling like he had been living in a lie. James lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with the weight of Emily's confession. The quiet hum of the house seemed to mock him as he replayed every moment of their life together. He thought back to their wedding day, the joy, the promises they made. How could everything have unraveled so quickly? He had always known that relationships had their ups and downs. But this was something else entirely. Emily had seemed so distant lately, but James had never imagined it would come to this. The affair, the lies, the hidden moments she shared with someone else. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung, it was the feeling of being invisible. For months, he had been right there beside her, offering his love, his time, his patience. Yet, all along, she had been slipping away, searching for something outside of their marriage. As the days passed, James found himself wrestling with anger, sorrow, and confusion. He couldn't understand how she had reached this point, why she had kept it a secret for so long. And yet, there was a part of him that wondered if he had missed the signs. Had he been too consumed by work? Had he failed to notice how disconnected they'd become? Was he to blame for not seeing the cracks forming beneath the surface? Emily, on the other hand, was torn. She loved James, or at least she once had. But in the quiet corners of her mind, she wondered if she had ever truly been happy. The affair wasn't just about escaping from James, it was about seeking a version of herself she felt she had lost. A part of her regretted how it had all gone down, but another part of her felt like a weight had been lifted, even if it came at the cost of their marriage. You said the days stretched on, each one feeling heavier than the last. James could feel the pressure building in his chest, like a storm ready to break. He tried to go about his routine, work, errands, the usual things, but nothing felt the same anymore. Every little thing reminded him of Emily. The way she used to laugh at his bad jokes, the way she'd greet him at the door with a tired smile after a long day. He missed her, but more than that, he was furious. How could she have done this? How could she have thrown away everything they had built? Emily, too, was living in a constant state of unrest. She had left the house during the day to clear her mind, but there was no escaping the guilt that clung to her like a second skin. The affair had been a desperate escape, a fleeting moment of relief. But now it felt like a shadow hanging over her every step. She couldn't look James in the eye anymore, not without feeling the weight of what she'd done. Yet, at the same time, she couldn't deny that she was also afraid of the emptiness that now lay ahead. What would her life look like after this? Was she really ready to let go of everything? To face the unknown? One night, after an especially tense silence between them, James couldn't take it anymore. He needed answers. He needed to know where they stood, if there was any chance of mending the broken pieces. The thought of facing the truth, whatever it was, scared him more than anything. But he knew it was the only way forward. He walked into the living room where Emily sat, her hands trembling as she stared at the floor. "Emily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." Emily's gaze remained fixed on the floor, the silence between them thick and suffocating. James could hear the steady beat of his heart in his ears as he waited for her to respond. His hands were clammy, his breath shallow. He had never imagined their conversation would lead to this. a moment where everything they had built together seemed to hang by a thread. She lifted her head slowly, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and uncertainty. "I don't know what to say, James," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry for what I've done, but I don't think I can go back to what we were. I've changed, and I don't know how to fix this." James could feel the sharp pang of her words, each one cutting deeper than he thought possible. "You don't know how to fix it," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "You're telling me that after everything we've been through, you can't even try?" The air in the room seemed to grow colder, and James felt as though the walls were closing in on him. This was it. The moment where everything either shattered beyond repair, or something, anything, could still be salvaged. But what if it was already too late? What if the love they once had was gone forever? The tension between them hung in the air like a storm, and for a moment, neither of them moved. James could feel the weight of everything they had been through, all the unspoken words, the hurt, the confusion, and the painful silence. Emily's tear-filled eyes met his, and for the first time in weeks, James saw something in her, a flicker of the woman he had once known, the one he had loved so deeply. "I don't know how to fix it either," she said, her voice barely audible. "But I want to try, James. I really do. I made a mistake, a huge one, and I hate myself for it. But I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose us." James stood there, frozen, feeling the storm inside him begin to calm. But still, doubt gnawed at him. Could he really forgive her? Could they ever go back to what they once had? He wanted to believe her, but fear held him back. Before he could say anything, Emily pulled something from her pocket, a folded piece of paper. "I've been thinking, maybe we need to start fresh," she said. "I've already made the hardest decision of my life, but I can't just walk away without giving us one last chance." James stared at the paper, his heart racing. The twist came so unexpectedly. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for something even more profound, a chance at redemption. And now, the real decision lay ahead. James looked down at the piece of paper Emily had handed him. It was a simple divorce agreement. But what struck him was the date. The date she had already planned to leave. But instead of walking away, she had left a note for him, asking him to decide if they could rebuild together. She wasn't asking for forgiveness right away. She was asking for a chance to prove that she could change, that she could make things right. For a moment, all James could hear was the sound of his own breath, sharp and uncertain. This was it, the final turning point. He had spent so much time fighting with the pain, the anger, the heartbreak. But in this moment, he realized that what they needed wasn't just time apart. It was a fresh start, a new chapter, together or apart. "I don't know if we can fix everything," James said softly, folding the paper back up. "But I want to try. I think we owe that to ourselves." Emily's face softened as she looked at him. For the first time in weeks, there was hope in her eyes. They both knew the road ahead would be hard, but it would be theirs to walk together. And even though the past couldn't be erased, they had a chance to build something new, something better. A chance at healing, at redemption, and at love once again.